You have that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate that. Thank you for that. Thank you for taking time to listen to me. Maybe I'll knock that over too, Vic, wherever you are. Curtis Cruz, WECC, Senior Technical Advisor. Means I'm old, I might know a little something, and I'll certainly hand out free advice. So, we're going to talk about standards today. It's a fundamental aspect of our business. It's something that every one of us deal with. Will you get good side? Okay. Does anybody stress over standards? There you go. Somebody, I can propose something at a VP. I'll be nice. Go give that to them. Notice too, some stress balls back there. I thought that was appropriate for talking about standards. They tend to stress people out just a little bit. They're about reliability, plain and simple. And you heard some talk about risk to reliability. So they fit into our holistic approach. Are they the tool that we always want to use? No. Is it a tool that we have to use? Yes. And that's important to understand. So we're in Tempe, spring. I thought it was going to be 100 degrees today. So maybe there should be an EHWT, extreme hot weather temperature definition, developed by you folks. Over time, we'll see what happens there. But I'm going to try to add a little flavor, add a little fun, perhaps. Standards and fun generally don't go together, but this is about fundamentals. So for those who are stressing, think about that first syllable, fun. The other ones, the duh and the mental, we'll get to those. So let's see if I can work this thing. Last time I was up here on stage, computer broke, so hopefully we'll work through that today. First question, we got an hour, so I hope that we get to the first slide. So this is a slide up, please pull out. I want to see who writes the reliability standards. Who writes? Who's responsible? How many people have been on the front? Raise your hand. Bless you. How many people have been on the saw? Bless you, bless you. Not easy, not casual. We'll talk a little bit about today. So we're going to get a little bit of words here. We'll see. Where's my confidence monitor? I got to have more confidence. Not us. I love it. Who's us? Define us. What is the definition of this? Earth. That's some WECC employee. Pull that away from them quick. When we really think about it, the industry writes the standards. Are we part of the industry's regions? Certainly. Are we part of that? Is no part of it? Is part of it? Certainly. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an opportunity. At the end of the day, the council, 2/3 majority covers the standards or gets put out there. And that's key to understand. Last November, some of the staff put out something about how many people are involved in the standards process. Probably less than 20%. I don't know what the number is. People get in trouble with quoting numbers. But if you hold on, what is that? Takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. We the people, Lonnie Ratliff. See you back there, huh? It's all good. When you think about what's happening today, we have those standards in place to help reduce risk. But how did we get there? What is it? Mandatory requirements. That word, mandatory. Used to be a bunch of good engineers sitting down talking about the ideas. We got to keep vegetation managed. We got to do this. We got to do X. Let's light some things up. So what happened? We look at a mandatory requirement for the users, owners, and operators. And sometimes we wonder who those are. We're in the midst of change right now, right? We're looking at IVR 901, what's happening in that world, what that risk is, what's happening there, what standards are being developed. We should be focused on reliable operation of the grid, period. And it's hard not to talk about that without compliance. Because everyone is wondering, what does WECC think about this standard? Well, the standard said you must have a blue cat. And what do you think of a blue cat? Bob? I'll call you out, buddy.
Not a cat person.
Okay. He's not a cat person, so he didn't believe in cats, right? So he's going to create something that's a great mouser that probably doesn't look like a cat I might think it might be. Maybe it's a Siamese cat. Maybe it's a tabby. Maybe it's a saber-toothed tiger. At the end of the day, it's about reliable operation of the grid and what happens there and understanding those words and what cat means to each of us and how we apply thoughts about cats. I'm a dog guy myself, but look at the end there. The end is about basic engineering functions and concepts. As an engineer, I can appreciate taking an object, trying to figure out what the issue is, trying to figure out a solution. I can hand it to Bill, he'll figure out another solution. I can hand it to Steve, he'll hand it to somebody else. We'll figure out a different solution. All of us have different solutions to the problems. Standards have to be built that we solve the issue together, collectively, collaboratively, using those basic engineering functions and concepts. So, don't tell me. There we go. Why are we here? Federal Act 215, we'll hear that quite often. Love to quote it, right? Big issue. Big event. There was a question about events and compliance right before here. Well, events are why we're here today to a large degree. Northeast blackout. I was never so happy to see that blackout, only because I nearly blacked out Central Texas in August of 2003 as an operator. It was a lot of fun to see all the sweats off of me. I don't have to worry about what happened in Texas. But then Federal Power Act got into play. Said you will have mandatory requirements. You will build enforceable reliability standards. You will have those in place. You will have people follow those. And it will be subject to FERC approval. So at the end of the day, we had issues. We had to address those issues as an industry. And it became standards as a way to address those issues in some manner. Are they perfect? No. Say that again. Are they perfect? No. I don't have any bingo. I almost called out a false bingo for Vic just to keep him on his toes. If you ever want to mitigate risk, don't go to a VFW hall in Central Texas and have a false bingo on a Friday night. You will not survive. Speaking from experience, not me, my wife, but it was not a whole lot of fun. But Federal 215 was very critical to the organization and what we do today. And it really is the foundational principles, all based on an event. So who must comply? Rules of procedure. Mr. Miller talked about rules of procedure. Thank you, sir, for your efforts. Really appreciate what you do in the Dragons area. I don't do SIP, talk to Morgan. Do OMP. But the rules of procedure kind of say this is what shall happen. Develop and maintain reliability standards. Remember that first word, reliability. They're not compliance standards. Focus on the reliability. Now, compliance has to be evaluated. We have a great group managed by Deb, my boss. There you go. That's short for next year, right? But we have a great opportunity associated with the compliance aspects of these standards. And I think you really got to look at what the heart of the matter is. And then the heart of the matter is we see something out there as engineers. We see something out there as operators. We see it as a risk. Do we know how big of a risk it is? Can we gauge that? Risk is a weird term to talk about, and I talk about it way too loose. There are people that have careers based on risk management. I'm not one of those guys. But when you think about it, you're thinking about that reliability, the performance of that bulk power system, ensuring that the jobs that we do day in, day out, keep the lights on for the people. And if you think about it in that manner, compliance becomes a little bit easier, not less confusing, a little easier. But if you really focus on that. So there's no rules of procedure who must comply. Owners, operators, users, and we hit the button one more time. But they're all based on reliability principles. There's that word again, reliability principles. If you haven't looked at that document, I think that's important to understand as you review standards, as they're coming through the process, as they're being developed. Think about, what are we doing? What's the purpose of this standard? How does it support the bulk power system? What is it doing? Not what is it doing to me? Because a lot of people tend to focus on that. Guarantee you, understand that. What is it supposed to do for that bulk power system? Now, those principles, if you really want to get into them, and I'm not going to, I was told not to read them all. I think we had somebody say too many words on that. I don't disagree. This is for your edification, your use. Take back, read through it. But look at what some of the things say. Perform reliably under normal and abnormal conditions. That's what you want to happen. You want to make sure that grid is operating in a way. Planners do the N-1, you operate the N-200 every day. Is that reality? Planners have a hard job, an extremely hard job, and they're hard to find. And you're looking at, how can I look at next year? How can I look at 10 years in advance and feel comfortable about what I'm seeing? And that's why I think it's important for us to get involved with WECC group a little bit more, to understand what they're seeing in terms of risks, understanding what they're looking out into the future, and work towards a collaborative effort when it comes to standards. And there are some standards out there associated with that long-term aspect of life. We're going to see those come more and more often because it's getting more and more uncertain. So you've got to do a lot of planning. You've got to do a lot of understanding. And planners will be wrong. Oh, God, I hate to say that. But when you hit the beach, plans change. Plain and simple. But you got to have a good plan going into it. You got to understand what's happening. You got to plan for the emergency operation and system restoration. Oh my gosh, we never want to be in a black start situation, right? None of us do. But you're going to be in situations where you have to restore part of your system. What does that look like? Back in 97, 98, I helped develop the roadshed program for the company that I worked for. And I ran a cold weather report for 19, so I'm talking about cold weather in Texas. I wasn't even in the industry at that point. I was sitting on a beach in La Jolla, California, surfing. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, true story, Tom. But lost power in Texas, 1989, no one talks about that. 2011 happened again. 2021 happened again. But when I was a good engineer, it was a long time ago, it seems like, I had to develop that load shed program without standards in place. This was before standards. And why did I do that? Is because the president of the company, in front of a town hall, was asked by the city of Bastrop manager why his load was dropped. And he said, well, if your name had been Zastrop instead of Bastrop, you might not have been dropped. That was truly the load shed program of that organization, alphabetically start dropping load. So I was challenged as a young engineer. I think I was young at one point. Develop something, no standard in place. Guess what? I separated UVLS, UFLS, manual load shed. There's a standard that's coming into play, if it's not in play already, that you have to do that today, 25 years later. The risk was there. Just wasn't realized at that point. It wasn't realized for the city of Bastrop at that point. But it's very interesting. When you start thinking about the reliability principles associated with that, That's what we should be focusing on, making sure these things happen. And I don't want to forget that last one, cyber attacks. Keynote speaker, cyber, much misunderstood, except for the people that are into it. But at the end of the day, we're all interconnected. We all use our phones. We all have computers. Think about what would happen if our EMSs suddenly went down. How would that look to people? How would you be able to operate the system in a reliable manner? So reliability principles for standards are very important. Now, who's the stakeholders? 4 key stakeholders. Government authorities, ER enterprise, registered entities. Well, what's a government authority? FERC, BCUC, Canadian entities. Those people are very critically important. Maybe some utility commissions, maybe not in the NERC space, but in the compliance space. NERC, part of it. Lonnie's going to be talking to you after lunch. I asked him if I needed to set him up for anything. He took it the wrong way. But he's going to talk about some of the activities that NERC does. ERO Enterprise, what's that? Anybody know? NERC and the 6 regions. That's the ERO Enterprise. It's the name that was developed several years ago. I don't remember how many years ago, but we were very integral to this. And registered entities. And I don't want to say that as that, oh yeah, the registered entities. You are critical to the building of good standards. Extremely critical. You've got a lot more knowledge. You've got a lot more experience. You've got a lot more opportunity. You just don't have a lot of time. And I think that's what holds a lot of us back. Getting the right time. When we talk about risk reduction, the Reliability, Security, and Technical Committee, RSTC, for those new folks, put this together several years ago. 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Risk mitigation. You saw a version of risk, ISO 31000. I was listening. Trying to think about bingo, but I was listening. This is another version of risk mitigation. This is a look at risk and how they manage it and how effectively. Now down at the bottom, you'll see if a reliability standard. And that's what I'm here to talk about, but it all revolves around risk and the importance of that risk. So it's important that you understand that there's a committee out there that you can get involved in that sees risk and identifies risk and creates opportunities. And at times says, yeah, this probably needs to be a standard. And here's another way. Had somebody work on that same risk strategy. Looks different, right? It's the same. Ultimately, it's the same. So it doesn't matter what program you put it in from a risk mitigation, risk identification, risk approach, you can come up with different ways of looking at it. And this is a perfect way to look at it. I really appreciate the work that was put in on this. I didn't do it. So that makes me more appreciative of it. But standards committee is in there. And I think it's important to understand that there are other committees that deal with risks as well. Sometimes an implementation guidance might be the right thing, a guideline might be the right thing, a white paper, whatever is needed. Standards don't have to be the end-all be-all. And there's our good friend FERC. Any FERC people here? All right. Love to work with FERC, trust me. They have a hard job as well. It may not seem that way, but they've got a lot of responsibility and a lot of opportunity. And sitting down and talking with those folks is always very interesting. I am a drafting team member of the 12-3, don't shoot me. But working with FERC through that was very, very interesting, trying to see what they envisioned by their orders, what they thought, how they were developing their thought process, what risks were being seen. So there's a couple of different ways that FERC can influence standards. They can do an order, they can do a NOPR, notice a proposed rule. I was told I had to remember all these acronyms. So I wrote a few down because I can't remember them. But final rules, different things that come out. We have one that came out, and I don't remember if it was an order, and real standards people will tell me what it was, but POC 28, POC 2-5 comes into effect April 1st, 2025. I think that's next week. Got an implementation plan. And what's it about? Disturbance monitoring. Why do we have a disturbance monitoring standard? Guess what? That blackout back in 2003, I think it was, they couldn't put the pieces together because everybody had different ways to monitor their systems. So they put a standard together that says you must do X and you must work on it in that manner. Well, they have one for IBRs, PRC 28. Why is that PRC 28 there? Order 901, does that sound familiar to anybody? Mark's going to talk about that, I think, tomorrow, or maybe Andrew, maybe Abby. They know 901 a lot better than me. I know it's after 900, but it's going to talk about that risk. And FERC saw it as a risk, put out an order, and here we go. Let's get some standards. We got 3 projects this year that have to be submitted to FERC in November. In November. We're in the end of April. Got a very short timeline for review of those standards. So let's talk about review. How do you start? It's a nice little path. Start to end. Maybe I should end the slide deck there and just walk away. I think that would be best in many respects. Now, I'm not going to be able to talk about everything because I talked too long. But each one of these boxes, SAR development. What's a SAR? Standards Authorization Request. You've got to get it together. You've got to develop it. You've got to produce it to a committee who says, yay, verily, this is a good SAR. Move forward. Make a project. Get a team. Get a drafting team. Every one of these things you can do. The reason I asked about making a SAR, not a whole lot of people make a SAR. Committees often make SARs. RSTC may make a SAR. But you as an individual may be able to make a SAR if you can make the case and get it past the PC, the planning committee, the standards committee. But once it's there, you got to convene a drafting team. You've got to get subject matter experts, people that know that issue, that understand that issue. Get them to write the language. Now, I'm an engineer. I've seen that way at times. I can't write with a dang. I say that. I write like an engineer. Now, some engineers are great. Bob's great at it, I know. I pick on Bob because I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. But the opportunity there, you may have some very technical people, and what they write down may not read well to people that aren't engineers or people that have to deal with, how do I implement this? How do I get a blue cat? Is it supposed to have 4 legs? A tail? I don't know. What does WECC think? We think about that. So the drafting team gets together, they draft a standard. Then they post it for stakeholder comments. Then in between, they'll have multiple meetings. They'll talk about things. Hey, I think this language is good. Nah, that's not good. So-and-so's not going to like that. They're going to vote it down. Wait. Does it support reliability? No, let's support reliability. That should be the conversations. They post it for stakeholder comments. Drafting team reviews the comments. That little tornado right there could be a Mobius strip. A never-ending solution. Never ends if you're not careful. If you can't get consensus, if you can't get 66.6% of the industry to agree to the language, the standard's not going to pass. Maybe. So that happens a lot. Put it out for final ballot, see what happens. Obtain board approval. Yay! Let's get it to the board. We got 66%, maybe 67. We're good. NERC files it with FERC approval, and we're all done until it starts over. I think the SIP versions are up to a double-digit version. -10-11-XX, I don't remember, Tom, on one of them. Because improvements, changes, thoughts, maybe weren't heard through the comments. Maybe they weren't acted on. Maybe there's no threat. Maybe there's something they didn't think about during that initial process. So it makes it very interesting. Oh, added one more bubble in there. 3, 2, 1 sounds like you're about to blow up, about to implode. Dennis, you keep on looking at me going, what the heck is this guy talking about? Yeah, see, you shouldn't have sit on the front row. You should have asked somebody about me. 321 process, rules of procedure. 5 or 6 different paragraphs. I don't keep them recorded. I don't memorize them. But it's the opportunity when you don't hit 66% for NERC staff in conjunction with the standards committee staff to create words on that standard and present them for the board for approval without your vote. Without your vote. That happened. PRC 29 last year. 321 was a lot of cussing and discussing a couple years ago, trying to figure out, should it happen? Can it happen? Well, it's happened once, and it's happening again with EOP 12-3. Being a drafting team member, I happen to be in on the discussions, and I don't know how much I can talk about EOP 12-3, so I'll try to keep it high level. But was in with the 321 discussions with the standards committee as a drafting team member. I listened to all the comments. We had 45 pages worth of comments on March 11th. On March 12th, when that ballot closed, we had 125 pages. And I will tell you, we are committed to answer every one of those comments. And I think that's important to understand. And some of them are very difficult. There's some that talk about cost, and we should include cost. And you kind of want to go, well, the June FERC order said get rid of cost. You really can't include cost. FERC said don't include it. So some of them are going to be hard truths. Understandable why people are concerned about that. But the 321 process is maybe something we should try to avoid as much as possible. It's very interesting when we were having the discussions as a drafting team, people said, don't threaten me with a 321 process. I'm an engineer, it's just a process. I'm not threatening anybody. But the opportunity is there, and it's been used twice. And maybe it might get used again, who knows? Don't know. But think about that. Think about how you can influence that. And it doesn't mean lower your standards, lower your thoughts or anything like that. But let's work on constructive comments, thoughts about what can help reliability. Got a lot of comments that said, oh, we don't like this. And that's where they stop. We don't like this, but how do you fix it? And had a company that talked about, you don't have enough about solar. They have probably $1 billion worth of solar out there. You didn't talk about generator cold weather constraints enough about solar. And I was like, okay, did anybody provide anything? Did the industry step forward and say, hey, this is an issue with solar from a cold weather constraint perspective? Did we hear it? I don't know. It gets very convoluted. You can ask Deb, lots of times she was looking for me. I was doing EOP 12 work, and she's like, oh my gosh, why'd I volunteer him for that? Was it voluntold? There is that ballot and post opportunity. It's a whirlwind. Got to be careful with that. We had people that suggested language, and the next posting, after it got put in there, said, no, it needs to be removed. Literally. Literally. So a lot of opportunity there.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
That's all needs to be said right there. Cool. For those not old enough, I might be. But that's a perfect example. We've got to be able to sit down and communicate. We've got to be able to have those hard discussions, those collaborative thoughts on how we can develop standards in a way that maintain the reliability. No standard is to be compliance proof. Oops, did I say something wrong? That's what standards are for. You're supposed to meet it. If you don't, there's an issue. How big of an issue? I'll let Michael and Dulce and our good friend Jimmy over here figure that one out. But opportunities there. Elephant in that room, abeyance. Abeyance. I'll say that slowly. Not going to talk about it. It's against my religion. But abeyance is a new product. Maybe Lonnie will talk a little bit about it, perhaps. But it is in EOP 12-3, some new language. If you haven't looked at it, please take time to look at it. It's a very interesting concept, very interesting approach, something different that we're going to try to use. It's not a free pass. Please don't think it's a free pass. Bob, you shouldn't have set up here either. Good faith. What does good faith look like? That's what you're worried about from your perspective. What does WECC think good faith is? Because that's a big part of that. Think about what abeyance does and why we're there. Now I'm going to go I've got 28 minutes left, so I think I need to leave about 5 or 10 minutes. Standard authorization request. Each one of these blocks, I've got a slide, but that SAR is very important. Talks about the need. Why do you need this requirement? And often that's what's pushed back on the most. Why do we need this? What support in reliability is this helping? Now, I wrote a SAR a couple of years ago on FAC 8, based on a report that the Euro Enterprise put together about things that we were seeing out there. Management of data, not easy. I don't remember how many pages the report was. The Standards Committee rejected that SAR. Thank you very much. Because it was written by a compliance guy. And it talked about compliance issues. And they say we don't do standards for compliance. The FAC 8 standard that's out there right now, go read that SAR. The one that's down there that's on low priority was written to alleviate the flood of self-reports. Sound like a compliance issue to me. But it's really about getting the word right. Getting the words where lawyers talk about joint ownership, where engineers years ago, they didn't care. Joint ownership of this table. Dennis, Deb, Jim, they have them at table. They're there. The lawyer's going to say, no, Dennis only owns the first 3 feet. So that's his table. No, it's not jointly owned. But it's a very interesting aspect, understanding that, thinking about the reliability aspects of it. Everybody needs to know what's happening. The SARs help develop that. SARs help hone that in. Once they get complete, you produce it to the Standards Committee. Now I'm going to intermix WECC and NERC because WECC does regional standards. WECC is one of the regions that do. I don't think all regions have standards. I don't think MRO has any. CERC does, RF does, Texas RE has one. We have a few. But it's very much the same process. So you present that SAR to the WECC Standards Committee or the NERC Standards Committee, and they must accept it. So they must understand what the issue is. So be clear, if you create a SAR, develop it, this is what it's needed for, this is what it impacts, this is why it's important to reliability. And you've got to get it past a group of people who may not know what that risk is. So you better be able to explain it well in the SAR and talk about the impacts. It must be within the scope. Sometimes that's a little interesting because, I don't know, people might argue that our scope is creeping a little bit with Cat 2. That's not mine to determine. It's an impact to the grid. We've got to make sure that we address that risk. Mark's going to talk all about that. Okay, thank you. I don't want to talk about it. But accept that. Convene that drafting team. Get people involved. Now, how do you get involved? You can self-nominate. If you really don't like someone, nominate them. It's happened. But think about the people that have the expertise. Can they address a voltage issue? Can they address a frequency issue? Can they address an IPR issue? Can they work together? That's a critical aspect. It's a team. I cherish the time of the EOP 12 team. I guarantee you, people from across the country that I got to talk to that I wouldn't have got to talk to in any other venue. But we had some very hard conversations, some very good conversations. And there's some very, very smart people. And they don't have to be smarter than me because that doesn't take much. But you've got to have the right people there. And the standards committee approves the team. So obviously, I slipped through the cracks. But I was on there, so I really appreciated that opportunity. So when you do that, then you draft a standard. And this is where the core, the meat of the matter is. How do you write that standard in such a way that when you say, hey, you got to have a cat to catch those mice, that you as a professional out there understand what a cat who catches mice is. Because each one of you are going to look at it differently. You're going to have one that catches a rat. You're going to have an auditor, yeah, but you're supposed to catch mice. Or one that catches possums, big rat in Texas. You really got to think about what those words mean. And it means something different to each and every one of you. You talk about regional inconsistencies. It's a term, it's an item, something out there, sometimes true, I'll be honest. Lonnie can tell you stories about me if he wants to. Give him a couple free drinks, he might tell you. But the opportunity here is each one of you approach the standards in a different manner, provide different evidence, provide different thoughts, provide different approaches. And you've got a group of people that got to look at it holistically and try to determine, does this meet the reliability standards? Is this what was intended? Is it a dead cat? Oh my gosh, standard didn't say it had to be alive. It said you had to have a cat. Those kind of conversations don't help anybody. The last little bullet there, great ideas alter the power balance in relationships. That's why great ideas are initially resisted. I don't know who the author of that was, but you think about it. You challenge the norm. And initially, oh my gosh, we can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Oh my gosh, I've got to hire 3 people to figure out ECWT. Got to work towards that. Think about what that means to you as an organization. Think about how you can add to the flavor, how more than 20% of you can get involved in that standards development and get better standards out there. When you post it out there, thinking about the questions, I wish we had more lawyers. I say that for the lawyers. But as you're asking questions, it really depends upon what question you asked and what response you'll get. What are you looking for? The drafting team really looked at that, the EOP 12 team. What do we want to ask these people? How do you want to ask them? How do you want to get response? How do you get response that's constructive? And that's important because every comment gets looked at. I know of the 400 plus pages of comments received over the 3 ballots, I looked at every comment. I answered every comment. My answer may not be the final one on record, but I went through it. Because I'm that kind of guy, unfortunately. But I wanted to feel good about what was being said, hearing what was being said, seeing if anything could be addressed, whether it be in a standard language or whether it be an outreach. Outreach is a valuable tool. We are going to have a small group advisory sessions on EOP 12-3. Guess what? I bet generator cold weather constraints come up. Guessing a few people might have a few questions about that. Don't be laughing, Chris.
In Texas, yeah.
In Texas, yeah. Anywhere. It's not the time to comment in direct opposition of a FERC order. And that got past the censors, I think. They didn't read too close. It's not the time to say, yeah, FERC got it wrong. Standard drafting team can't do anything with that, especially if it's a FERC order. The FERC order said, you shall do this. That is the intent of that drafting team. But if you say, hey, you should have included costs on these constraints directly, we believe that to be a factor. I don't disbelieve that it's a factor. But unfortunately, FERC said do X. So there are times and places to do things. It's very hard. Standard drafting comments, probably not the best time to talk about FERC. There's a lot of comments in this latest revision around the NARC process. The EOP 12-3 generated cold weather constraint and cap extension process. Something like that. It's a process that's outside the standard that has already been developed and already been out there in some form for TPL 7 for years. Years. Just got adapted to EOP 12-3. A lot of comments about how we can remain consistent, how we can use that process in an effective manner. And I'm looking at it myself. I helped draft, helped work on that. Really appreciate Lonnie's group working with it. Kyle, Derek did a whole lot of work on that. Will it be perfect? It's going to be like a standard. No, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to do our dangest to make sure that we understand what's being provided to us and that we go through that approval process as effectively as we can. But it's outside the standard. Why is it outside the standard? Well, if it's inside the standard, if we made a mistake on step 1, we would have to go through the standard process. The standard process is a lot of fun, but it might take a year to correct it versus a sit-down discussion, let's see what's going on and let's get it corrected in an outside process. It's another tool that we have to use outside of standards. That's important. The drafting team reviews those comments, does a lot of good stuff, looks at it, goes, man, what was this guy thinking? Sometimes call them up. I was known to call several people up that made some comments going, I'm trying to understand what you're doing here. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to tell the drafting team? And sometimes those conversations went good and sometimes they went real good. But at the end of the day, trying to get an understanding in a short amount of time was not easy. Balloting is standard, pretty standard process. Get out there and get a vote. Yay, 66%. You got to be in the ballot pool. This is the key. You need to be in there where you can cast the votes. Now, people cast votes even if they didn't even look at the comments. A lot of people, there's a lot of groups out there, and I really appreciate the groups. They will follow that group regardless of what that group says. It's okay. We had some that said, I like so-and-so's comments. You go to so-and-so, and they provided no comments. Literally. I'm not kidding you. What's a drafting team supposed to do with that? They didn't like my snarky reply. I think their legal took my snarky reply out. In person, I would tell them. But be rest assured that every one of them gets looked at. Every one of them does have a focus, does have people trying to figure out what's being said there. If you say something's wrong, suggest language. That's some of the best information I can tell you. I don't like the way this is worded, try this. Versus, I don't like the way this is worded. Where do I go with that? As a drafting team member, where the heck do you go? A blue striped cat. Oh no, that's not what they meant. But you don't know unless they tell you. Weighted segment, 2/3, we talked about that. Getting WECC board approval, I went over that 2/3 because I only got 15 minutes. But it's pretty simple. 2/3 majority vote, yay, goes to the board. Board says, yay, verily. Let's move it up to FERC. Most of the time. Most of the time. They get the minority decisions, the minority thought processes in many cases. But you'll hear it at the public Howard Google, bless his heart, where is he? No, he's not here. You know, we'll tell the board here, or Sue Jen will, here's what we recommend. So it's very important to get it in front of a board. Board will make, board role is different. They're not going to make those technical changes in the standard. Now that WECC 321, or that WECC, that 321 process, NERC staff, standards committee people can make changes to the standard. When EOP 12-3 gets posted, you will see some changes in the language. We'll see changes in the definition, not ECWT, David. Where's David Lemons? He's back there playing on his computer. Thank you. But the opportunity is there are going to be some changes based on the comments provided. So I think that's important to understand. Get that board approval. If it goes through WECC, NERC still got to approve it. Oh, by the way, got to file it with FERC. How do you file it with FERC? You got to be able to explain it to FERC how the drafting team got to point X. In talking with NERC Legal, EOP 12-3 probably has 85 pages or more describing how the drafting team got from -2 to -3. If you really want to have fun on a late night, read those. I do. I like to see what's happening, what was stated, what was there, even if I'm not involved. But I think it's important. So this standard development process is easy, right? You look at a project, that first number in front of it is the year it was created. 2024-03 for EOP 12-3. We're going to make it 2025. But guess what? Forget everything you thought you just heard. Every bit of it. Don't remember a single thing from today except it's important for you to be involved. Standards, modernization, process and procedures task force. Could even get the whole title on there. You may have heard this. Board said back in, I don't know, February sometime, I don't remember when, maybe it was last year, I think, the NERC board said, yeah, we need to do something about this NERC process. We need to do something about this standards development and how it occurs. There may be some people, we got some Western Interconnect people on there. I don't have their names in front of me, but thank you for your service there. They're going to look at everything. The whole process for development of standards, they're going to look at that and possibly revamp it. How are they going to revamp it? Maybe it doesn't stay at 66%. Maybe Curtis gets a vote. We don't want that. We'll see what happens. But that is the great unknown. Another version of risk, and I know he gave me the thing, who writes the reliability standards was already gone. Should I hit the thing again there, Haley, for the next one? Can I go back? Did the second Slido didn't come up? Dadgummit. Oh well. About risk. The question was, how many of you have sodium nickel batteries in your stations, your substations? Does anybody know why that's important to ask that question? Come on, you got the answer. I can see it. Sodium nickel is not covered in PRC 5. It's an alternative electrochemical-based storage device. How big of a risk is it in the West? How many people have it? Because since it's not covered by compliance, how is it being managed? How are you looking at those? How are you testing those? How are you maintaining those? Is that something we should be worried about? That's popping up across the United States right now. Now, guess what? There is a project. All right. Did I break it again, Maylee? There was a project in 2024 by WECC that put together a standards feedback team, and we're walking a razor's edge. We're looking at reliability risks, and it's a cross-functional team. There was a question about how we interact with VIX Group. There are multiple people from multiple parts of our organization looking at risks, trying to see, are there ways that we can provide feedback to standards? And when I say feedback to standards, that includes outreach. That includes maybe practice guides. Maybe I can encourage somebody to do implementation guidance, whatever the case may be. But we have a very good group of people that are working on getting that information back. Why? We want to evaluate the effectiveness of those standards. We want to have feedback on those standards. We want to make those standards better. We want everybody to understand what risks are being mitigated, how they can be mitigated, and how better language will help that. So we've got a cross-functional, I said 9 minutes here. You told me 5. Okay. We want to make sure that that happens in our organization. So we're looking at risk mitigation efforts. I don't have bingo, but using data analysis from all parts of our organization, trying to provide a consistent approach. We'll do whatever we can with the tools that we have in place, including a SAR. We have been instrumental in developing a SAR for under-frequency load shed in the Western Interconnect. We initiated that. We've got 3 others that we're looking at. That nickel sodium is one of them that we need to kind of find out what's happening there. Is that important? Is that important for WECC? Is it important for WECC reliability? And these impact areas are from 2024, but if you look at the 2025 ones, risk mitigation, partnership, perspective, people. You've got a group of people that want to impact the grid reliably. We want to have that feedback. We want to engage with you on that. We want to understand the issues that are presented to you, and we want to be more effective. And that's important. And I think as we move through this, we've got several of the people here in the group, Fahad, several senior technical advisors, Mr. Fletcher and myself, a couple other folks on Vic's side. I think it's important to see that holistic approach to what's happening out there and understanding that we're not here to write standards for every risk. We're here to understand it and mitigate it in the most effective manner that we can. And I believe this is my last slide besides resources. I want you to think outside the box. When that modernization stuff comes around, think outside the box. Don't think, oh my gosh, I used to do it this way. Get involved as best as you can. If you can find time, get your executives to understand it takes time. That's the hardest thing in the world to do, right? Because getting on the standard drafting team, getting involved means a commitment of time. But think about a commitment to reliability. So think more about that. Here are a couple slides about resources. I'm not going to talk about them because I've got 2 minutes and 11 seconds. But I don't know when the slide deck will be out there, but there's some very important aspects of the NERC website out there that I think are important. I pull up the standards every day. I pull up the one-stop shop because we get calls every day about, hey, I got this issue with mod 26. I don't memorize standards. That is the world's worst thing to do. When I started in the business 15 years ago, I read all the standards front to back. That was a lot of fun. I don't do that. Somebody talks to me about mod 26, I'm going to pull up mod 26, think about it. I'm going to go to, guess what? The project page, if it's up, Lonnie. And me and Lonnie go way back. He may not want to admit it, but I go to look at the comments from the drafting team, look how they tried to address things and come up with an answer, the most effective answer that I can at that point. May not be the right answer. I will make mistakes. I'm an engineer and Aggie, but I'm also a human. So forgive me at times, but I will do my best to provide you the best information that I can. These are great resources to use. I encourage you to use them, and I encourage you to get involved with standards. Did I make it on time? Are there any questions? Good, thank you. I'll be glad to answer anything you might have. And Donovan's on the line, or at least he told me to be on the line. Donovan Crane helps and supports me, keeps me sane, which is not easy, but he does a great job of it. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And who's taking over to say when lunch is, or do I just say go to lunch?